I sat there at the head of the Thanksgiving table, the steam from the turkey still rising between us, while my wife, Rebecca, slid a thick manila envelope across the mahogany surface. Her smile wasn't the one I had fallen in love with 10 years ago. It was sharp, jagged, and filled with a terrifying kind of triumph. My mother gasped, my father dropped his fork, and the room went deathly silent as Rebecca leaned in and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear that she had already changed the locks on our house and emptied the joint savings. I looked down at the papers, my hands remarkably steady, realizing in that singular heartbeat that the woman I had built a life with hadn't just stopped loving me, she had been planning my public execution for months. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest as I looked around the room at the people who were supposed to be my support system. My brother-in-law, Trevor, wouldn't meet my eyes, and that's when the first seed of a new reality took root. He knew. They all knew. Rebecca had spent the last 6 months painting me as a monster to our social circle, preparing the ground so that when she finally struck, there would be no one left to catch me. She wanted me to feel the cold pavement before I even realized I'd been pushed off the ledge. "I think it's time you leave, David," Rebecca said, her voice airy and light, as if she were suggesting I take out the trash. "The car is already packed with the few things I thought you'd actually need. Trevor will walk you out." I didn't argue, I didn't beg, I didn't even ask why. When you realize the person you share a bed with has weaponized your own life against you, your survival instinct takes over the part of your brain that still wants answers. I stood up, the chair scraping harshly against the hardwood floor, and walked out of my own parents' house, followed closely by a man I once called a brother. As I stepped into the biting November air, I felt a strange, chilling clarity. Rebecca thought she had won because she had the house, the money, and the narrative. What she didn't realize was that I had been keeping a very different set of books. You see, the thing about being a forensic accountant is that you notice patterns long before you see the intent. I had noticed the small discrepancies in our household accounts a year ago. I had seen the shell companies Rebecca's business consultant had helped her set up. I had stayed silent, watching her move the pieces, wondering if she was just being cautious or if she was being cruel. Today, I had my answer. She wasn't just leaving, she was trying to erase me. As I drove the beat-up SUV she left for me toward a motel I'd booked weeks in advance, just in case, I felt the first wave of hope. It was a dark, cold kind of hope, but it was there. She thought she had stripped me of everything. She didn't know about the secondary server in the basement she'd forgotten to clear. She didn't know about the encrypted drive tucked inside a hollowed-out book in the guest room. And most importantly, she didn't know that the inheritance my grandfather left me wasn't just in a bank account. It was tied up in the very real estate firm her new consultant was desperately trying to merge with. The motel room smelled of stale cigarettes and cheap cleaner, a far cry from the 5-bedroom colonial I had just been evicted from. I sat on the edge of the bed, the flickering neon sign from the parking lot casting a rhythmic blue glow over my laptop. I pulled up the files. Rebecca had been clever, I'll give her that. She had funneled nearly $400,000 into offshore accounts, masked as consulting fees for a fake interior design business. She had documented every time I worked late, every time I missed a dinner, framing it as neglect in her secret journal, which I'm sure her lawyer was currently salivating over. But Rebecca's biggest mistake was her arrogance. She believed I was the same soft-hearted man she married, the man who would do anything to make her happy. She didn't realize that when you break a heart that thoroughly, the pieces grow back as glass, sharp and transparent. I began to map out the connections. Her consultant, a man named Sterling, wasn't just a business partner. The photos I'd recovered from her cloud backup confirmed they had been together for 18 months. They weren't just planning a divorce, they were planning a hostile takeover of my life. I spent the next 3 days in that motel room, barely sleeping, drinking lukewarm coffee and staring at spreadsheets. I felt a deep sense of betrayal every time I saw a charge for a hotel room in Aspen or a jewelry store in Manhattan on dates when she told me she was visiting her sick mother. But with that betrayal came a terrifying sense of calm. I wasn't just looking for money anymore. I was looking for the one thing Rebecca valued more than her reputation, her freedom. On the fourth day, I discovered the glitch in their plan. Sterling wasn't just helping Rebecca hide money, he was using her accounts to launder funds from a failing construction project he was overseeing. Rebecca thought she was the one doing the manipulating, but she was being used as a human shield. If the authorities looked into the accounts, Rebecca's name was on every digital signature. Sterling had set it up so that if everything went south, she would be the one facing the deposition, not him. I felt a momentary flash of pity for her. It's a strange thing, isn't it? To realize the person who just destroyed your life is currently being destroyed by the person they trust most. You might think you know the people in your life, your spouse, your siblings, your friends, but when money and power are on the line, you'd be surprised how quickly the masks slip. I've seen this happen to so many people. It's a pattern as old as time, and if you're listening to this, you probably know exactly what that feels like. That moment when the floor falls out from under you and you realize you're completely alone. But I wasn't alone. I had the data. I reached out to an old contact from my early days in the city, a man named Miller who specialized in complicated financial recoveries. We met in a diner 30 miles outside of town. I showed him what I had. Miller whistled low, his eyes scanning the lines of code and the bank transfers. "She's in deep, David," Miller said, sliding the tablet back to me. "But you're deeper. If you pull this thread, the whole sweater doesn't just unravel, it catches fire. Are you sure you want to do this? There's no going back to amicable after this." I said, "She ended amicable at the Thanksgiving table. I just want what's mine." The plan was surgical. I didn't file a countersuit immediately. I didn't call her screaming. I stayed invisible. I let her think I was broken, living in a motel, drinking myself into a stupor. I even sent a few pathetic-sounding texts, begging for a chance to talk, which she promptly ignored or sent mocking screenshots of to our mutual friends. I needed her to feel completely, utterly safe. I needed her to believe that I was a non-threat, so she and Sterling would proceed with the final phase of their merger. The merger was the key. They needed to move the final $2 million from my grandfather's trust, which Rebecca thought she had legal access to, into Sterling's development fund to close a deal on a new luxury high-rise. What Rebecca didn't know was that the trust had a morality and litigation clause. If the trustee was involved in any ongoing legal disputes or suspected of financial impropriety, the funds would be frozen and redirected to a secondary beneficiary, me. I waited until the very morning of their big closing. I knew they were at the law firm downtown, champagne probably already on ice. I sat in my lawyer's office, a sleek space with windows overlooking the city, and I gave the nod. With one click, we filed the emergency injunction. We didn't just file for a divorce. We filed a civil suit for fraud, naming both Rebecca and Sterling. We attached every single one of the offshore transfers, the photos of their business trips, and the evidence of the shell companies. But that was just the legal side. The psychological side was much more satisfying. I had also sent a blind copy of the entire file to the investors of Sterling's high-rise project. These were men who didn't care about cheating wives, but they cared deeply about money laundering and federal investigations. By the time Rebecca and Sterling walked into that boardroom, their phones were already exploding. I drove to the building. I wanted to see it. I stood across the street as the glass door swung open, and Sterling was practically thrown out by two security guards. He looked disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face a pale shade of gray. Rebecca followed a moment later, looking frantic, clutching her designer handbag like a life raft. She saw me. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just stood there, leaning against my new car, the one I'd bought with the first installment of the trust funds that had been released to me that morning. The look of pure, unadulterated shock on her face was better than any settlement check. She tried to run toward me, her heels clicking frantically on the pavement, but I simply got into the car and pulled away. The aftermath was a slow-motion car crash for them. Without the trust money, Sterling's project collapsed. The investors pulled out, and within 3 weeks, the business consultant was being questioned by the DA. Rebecca, realizing Sterling was going to pin everything on her, turned on him. She tried to come back to me, of course. The "I was confused and he manipulated me" emails started flooding my inbox. She even showed up at the motel, not realizing I'd moved into a penthouse weeks ago. I watched through my lawyer as they tore each other apart in court. It turns out that when two predators are backed into a corner, they don't team up, they eat each other. Rebecca lost the house and the settlement because we were able to prove she used marital assets to fund her affair and the fraudulent business. She lost the car, the savings, and most importantly, her reputation. The monster she had spent months creating in the eyes of our friends was revealed to be a mirror. Everyone saw her for exactly what she was. I remember the final day in court. Rebecca looked older. The spark of arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow, desperate look. As we signed the final papers, she leaned over and asked, "How? How did you know?" I looked at her, truly looked at her, for the last time. "I'm an accountant, Rebecca," I said quietly. "I've always been good with numbers. You just forgot that I was a person, too." I walked out of that courtroom a free man, with my dignity intact and my future secured. The house is sold now, the money is back where it belongs, and the people who turned their backs on me are suddenly very interested in grabbing a drink to catch up. I haven't answered a single one of them. If you've ever felt like you're being gaslit, or if you feel like the people closest to you are playing a game you don't understand, listen to your gut. The patterns are always there if you're brave enough to look at them. I thought my life was over on that Thanksgiving day, but it was actually the first day of the rest of my life. I have more stories like this, stories of people who thought they could bury the truth, only to find out that the truth has a way of digging itself back up. Would you like me to tell you about the time my own brother tried to steal our father's estate while I was still at the funeral?